Hello, friends. So, welcome to another episode in the podcast series of HR to CHRO. And today we have Mr. Kaushik Chakraborty with us, who has had a long career and very close to my career, who moving on from one department to another and getting experience of all the, so many things, which maybe eventually has helped him reach where he is. So, he started his career as management trainee in Blue Dart, then he joined IT in informatics, then he joined sales in Max New York Life. Then he joined projects in ICICI Prudential. Then program manager in ABN AMRO. Then he was associated with Toastmasters. And then he went into training. He was head training in Royal Bank of Scotland. And then L&D head in JLL. And then HR and CSR. And then HR head in Savills. And now Chief People's Officer. So welcome, Kaushik. Thanks for giving us time.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
All right. So to start with, so many CHROs, chief people officers I have been interacting with, many of them did not start their career right in HR. Some of them, they started their career in sales. Some of them, they started their career in operations. And one common factor was taking different assignments, the openness to take different assignments. So is this a trade secret for, for CHROs or chief people officer to have?
Well, I'm not too sure, but look, I mean, the way I look at my journey, uh, I think what I probably bring onto the table is that I've not been uh, I'll not use the word typical HR person, but rather, I've not been somebody who has seen business from, an HR prism. I mean, I've been somebody who has been into the frontline business. So many things that you spoke of. But primarily, I've been initially a frontline business guy, and then obviously moved into the country office of a bank, where a lot of work happens from the head office, where I was the program head, and there I got an opportunity, and I'll probably in the conversation come to how it all happened. But the transition into the learning and development side happened, and then obviously into core HR. Uh, so I'm not too sure that has been the journey of a lot of people or not. But if that has been your experience, that's good. But the point is that I think more than anything else, that really brings in a very different perspective
Correct.
of HR. When you look at business very differently, you understand business better. You don't look at things from a lot of people say that HR is like ivory tower function, where you look at a lot of things from a very different angle. So here you understand business far better than just being a support function. I mean,
Correct.
true sense of word, you can be a business partner.
Correct. I think so. Over the last few years, when we started our journey, HR was supposedly more of a support function, like you said, but now it is moving more into the strategic function with having a seat at the table and helping business achieve their objectives. So that has been a real change. And a person like you who has had experience of the front line, the corporate, can obviously help looking at things in a different way and help the organization achieve their goals faster. So, my question on how being close to business helps a person reach the CHRO level faster will come second. First, what is the secret of your success, Kaushik?
Well, I don't know how we define success, but
Okay, so only 0.5% people are able to reach the CXO level.
okay, that's interesting. Well, I think in my case, there are a few things that I feel has worked for me. Okay, one is resilience as a word is something which is more prevalent in post-COVID area.
Correct.
But I personally felt that that's one area of competency or whatever you call it that I had. I've been very resilient in terms of various assignments that I've taken, the way I have navigated various circumstances. Everything said and done, uh, when you are into different roles in different organizations, you come across different kind of people, different kind of situations. I have seen the dot-com burst, and incidentally, I was in the IT sector when it happened, at a time when we all were ready, in our mid-20s to become millionaires. Okay, and the dot-com burst happened. I've been, uh, into uh, the GFC crisis. I've seen in close quarter. where I was working with a bank, which actually a lot of people don't know. Even our bank, it, in a way, it almost changed hands thrice before the whole culmination of the final process happened. Even today, it is called NatWest. So I was sitting in the same chair and I was seeing that whole things around me were changing. There were enough people, who were going through a redundancy and things like that. So there's a lot of element of resilience. I think plays its role, has at least played its role in my case. And then of course the COVID era, where I joined an organization, a multinational which entered India, and within a year of kicking off the business, getting the leadership team ready from a HR perspective, you suddenly have a pandemic, of a nature and which you have never seen ever in your life. Uh, the point I was trying to make is that resilience probably in some way or the other has helped me navigate those various phases of my life. And this I'm talking of, uh, mega points, which is known from a macroeconomic perspective. But there are alongside, there are other challenges in life which comes in, whether it is personal, whether it is, within the organization. So I think the way I was able to navigate, uh, and I believe that there has been a lot of strong element of resilience, which is there in place, uh, which worked for me. And just to add to it, and as I speak, it actually opened up in a big way for me this whole world of resilience and resilient. Uh, to me, when I was doing a very recently, few months back, there was kind of a roundtable workshop for CHROs, which was happening in one of the big four firms. They had invited few people. There was a conversation there was happening, and there was this very well-known leadership person, a leadership facilitator, who was trying to facilitate this whole session. And when I was leaving the room, we all were supposed to basically look at individuals, and there was this whole uh, um, kind of a work that they were trying to put across, where people were trying to find out what are the key competencies that this person stands for. As I was leaving the room, he just called me that I just wanted to tell you one thing. Looking at you, I felt something and I wanted to share with you. I said, what? And he said that, I think one thing that you have very strongly in you is resilience. And it just opened up a very new door for me. I don't know why he said what he said, but somewhere I also strongly believed in it always. And I was very happy that somebody just looking at me, not even knowing me, meeting me for the first time, actually came out with this uh, word as a key element which is visible in me.
So maybe that is because I also remarked, no, that you look so young. So people who are resilient, they look younger because they don't have those worry lines or those marks on their face. So maybe that is why. Maybe that is why I also felt that you look very young, by God's grace. So I'm sure resilience, definitely, but also looking at your career, one thing which comes out is that you see people, they try to be in the comfort zone. They don't like being challenged and they don't like taking risks. So looking at your career, you were never afraid of taking risks because that is one of the best ways to learn, to grow. So I think that
Absolutely.
openness and that ability to take risks and be good at it, giving your best, because then you have to work harder to when you're taking up going into a new domain. So that is also comes out very strongly,
Yeah,
Kaushik.
so I think one key word was resilience. The other is expansion or whatever you call it. Okay, I think wherever I was, for example, when I moved into in my previous organization, I started as the head of learning and development
L&D,
for
correct.
West Asia, and then within a year I got into the core HR function along with my L&D head position, and that's the time when DNI was coming up in a big way. I took that up as something with a lot of passion, and it even today it's one of my key passionate area, and I think I did a lot of work around it. In fact, to the extent that I was in the regional DNI council of the organization at APAC level. CSR, starting that function. When I started, I still remember I first did a blood donation camp across all offices, and everybody said, "Oh, this organization, nobody has time. Who is going to, get into CSR? I mean, it's not going to." happen. And I think I still remember the figure. It is 680 people donated blood in 2 hours.
Very
Okay.
nice.
And for me, the way I was looking at it is that probably I touched and saved at least 650 lives. That's the
Correct.
way, and then it only got bigger and bigger. And when I left the organization, there was a separate foundation trust which was there. And I was a trustee in that, which was an additional role that I was having and a separate team for that as well. Now, what I'm trying to say is that I think it's very important in life that you try and expand yourself, whether within the organization or taking up challenges with new assignments or new areas, because there is one life, I believe. And it's very important that whatever, and you tend to spend a lot of time in your professional workplace or the professional work that you do. So how much you can get out of life has a direct relationship of how much you have been able to extract from the work that you do, and
Correct.
that can only happen when you commit yourself off to that expansion for yourself, in life. And in work area, it is very important. And since we are talking of CHR and all of it, obviously it's in work area. So not only limited to work area, I think I have tried seeing expansion in myself in many other areas of life as well.
Very nice. So generally people, they try, I mean, to the youngsters who are watching, this is a very powerful message that whenever they are given a stretch assignment or maybe a new location, a new geography or something else, so they should at least look at it from an open point of view. Generally people, because of lack of self-belief or for whatever reason or the peer pressure, they try avoiding such challenging assignments. So, your message is very powerful that this is how you grow, this is how you expand, and expansion is what will make you reach the top faster. So thank you for this message, Kaushik. So now we talked about business. So why is being close to business or knowing about getting a grounding in business, why is it important for an HR person to get a seat at the table?
Well, look, whenever people say that, HR is a support function, the first thing I always say is business is about people
Correct.
and HR is about people. And that's the reason, without HR, business don't happen, right?
Correct.
And so, I mean, that's the i- intricate relationship, that's the close relationship that business has with HR. And for anybody, to succeed, I think it is important that you understand the business from the ground. And it is not necessary because, I have had my initial experience, doing various kinds of, groundwork, being a sales and business guy. But even as a HR person, for example, when I moved from banking to IPC, International Property Consulting, as an industry, there was a time when I used to go every 15 days for one of a sales call or the other. I used to try and
Okay.
do that. Okay,
Okay.
because that is to give you an understanding in terms of what is a typical life of a person, who is the one who is actually generating revenue for you, who is the one who is there right there on the ground, going through the sun and the rain, and trying to bring in business to the firm. And if you understand their life, probably you will frame your thought process, and at the end, policies or you know other support areas which is closely linked with the challenges that is there, in their day-to-day life. Okay, I mean, for example, I remember in one of my visit to a project site, I realized that there was no proper washroom for female which was available. Okay, I mean, obviously it's a male-dominated, uh, you know, function,
Industry.
but then you talk of DNI, you talk of this thing, but that is something, it really opened up a very different thought process in me. And if and obviously we took certain steps, where we made it mandatory that we'll sign off with the client if there are some of these basic facilities are there in place. Okay, so things like that. uh, so I think it's very important that you strive to be in touch with the ground, because if you have that in place, then only you will have a say in,
Correct.
on the table. Otherwise it doesn't happen. Okay, and that is when people will value what you say, and what you say will have a value, in terms of the content that you bring in onto the table.
Correct. And that is how we can help, HR can help business also, because they might have made some strategy, and with the
Yeah.
experience of business in an HR guy, he or she can point out the mistakes or how to improve it better, because they might have taken some assumptions, but so that is very powerful. So a young HR guy, let's say, who has started his career or her career in HR, now that guy, that person is under pressure to do his or her KPIs, KRAs also excellently well. And also he or she has to take out time to understand business. So how can they do it? How can they get a grounding in business, simultaneously ensuring that they are performing well in their core domain also?
Well, I mean, that's true in all aspects of life. You'll have to take time out firstly. Okay, you need to balance your time accordingly. But more than anything else, it all emanates from the fact that you need to, at the end of the day, you need to really love people. You need to really love connecting with people. That's the core of this function. So as a young HR person, if that element is there in place, then you would like to understand the people that I'm responsible for in whatever form, and that being part of the people function, how much I know about the people that I'm supposed to cater to, how much of their professional daily life I'm aware of. If I need to know that, if I want to know that, then only I'll be able to serve them better. And that can only happen when I try and understand, a typical day in their life,
Okay.
to be able to make that typical day in their life better. Because that's what, at the end of the day, is my job in whatever form in whatever area of HR you are in. At the end
Correct.
of the day, you are here to
Make
basically
people's life
make
better. Correct.
life better for the people who are there in the organization.
Correct. So how can it be planned? So do they take out, let's say, one day a month to go out with sales or to talk to salespeople, or one day a month?
Look, again, I think depends on the industry, depends on uh, the function that you are in, how much time and what you do, you need to take out. Uh, but it can be any. If you are in a manufacturing sector, you need to know how the shop floor works. What are the challenges in a shop floor?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I mean, so whatever is the industry,
Mm-hmm.
the ground looks very different for different this thing.
Correct.
And to understand the ground realities better, depending on the industry, you'll have to invest more and more time. But yes, it is important that you invest that time. And you are right. For example, uh, in my organization, for my function, in some of this thing, we have made it clear that there has to be at least once in 15 days. There has to be a visit, and there has to be a visit report as well, just to
Okay.
get. It may not be adhered to always 100%, but as somebody who leads the HR function, if you make it in some way, if not mandatory, I don't like to use the word mandatory, but if you make it part of at least one of the KPIs they need to follow. Okay, so that is there in back of their mind. If not, uh, they will, in certain period of time, they will make those visits. They will try to understand the ground realities better, and they will take time out. Okay, and somebody who wants to succeed will take time out, depending on the need that he has. How much time who takes to understand the business better, understand the challenges better. Looking into the industry that you are in or the organization that you are in, you will take time out if you really want to do better.
Very right, Kaushik. See, this is the whole idea of these podcasts, Kaushik. When I was starting my career, I don't know about, I'm sure you would have had the similar experience. There was nobody who would tell you how to grow in life, in your career. You had to learn everything on your own. People either would not have time or they would be hardly bothered. So, looking at such senior people like you, when youngsters, not only in the HR domain, but in any domain, when they get this idea, see, normally anybody would try to shrink away from additional responsibility, or in case somebody gets a directive from the senior management that being in HR you have to spend time with business, the first reaction would be, why do I need to do that? My KRA is not to learn about business, my KPI is not to learn about business. But listening to you, they would realize the value of this for their future career and how powerful this is for. So now another thing, which again, to coming back to your career, Kaushik, So you changed industries, you changed functions, you changed profiles. So was there, I mean, was it a conscious decision that this is what, this sounds challenging, this is what I need to, I should get into, or this is one skill that I need to learn, so that is why let me move into, this industry, this domain, this profile. How did it used to work in your case?
Well, in my case, the two things. One is a change from business to HR. That has a story as to how it happened. Okay, and that was a very conscious, very inner call that I tried answering. But when it comes to change of industry, I don't think it was really too planned.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, uh, for example, I was there in the IT sector. There was this MNC which was making its foray into India. IT was booming. That was the dot-com era. The two, actually, people talk of startup India and startup today, but those were the real era of startup. Okay, I mean, I've attended pink slip parties also. I mean,
Oh,
some of the those were some of the things that happened during the dot-com burst. So I've seen those heydays, and probably it was the in thing to be there and understand industry, which was very different. The dot-com burst happened, but that was also the year when the insurance sector opened up. Okay, and I joined Max New York Life as one of the initial set of managers, who joined in the organization. Okay, so uh, again, that was the era where all these organizations was coming in, and that gave me an opportunity. From there, I moved into another insurance company where I had set
and
up their HNI division as the national project
if I
manager.
could, if I could
Yeah,
add here, so I
yeah.
joined from IT to insurance industry, and it
Oh,
was
really? Okay,
very tough industry. So I worked in ICICI Lombard. So it was a very tough industry, even for
okay,
HR or sales, or it
yeah.
was, so many things were happening. So sorry, please go on.
So that's what I'm saying. So, but it gave a, I mean, for example, those are the fast growing time since we were in ICICI Prudential for our project manager was a very, uh, if I may use the word, very exciting role it was. At a very young age, I had to, every month there was a review happening at the highest level.
Correct.
I have made at that age, I've made presentation to, some of the iconic figures of banking at that point of time, like Shikha Sharma and all. I still remember just few months into the role, and she was traveling to Delhi, and I was suddenly told in the next 15 minutes, you'll have to make a presentation, to her. I mean, those were exciting times. And, I was traveling every week to Mumbai, trying to set up this whole new division, right from designing of the logo to naming of the function as Priority Circle to coming up with the initial 110 people that was hired, designing of the branches, which looked very different. I mean, all was getting done, and all of it was at a very very young age.
Correct.
And so and that was also to do with the fact that that was a sunshine sector being considered, and a lot of money was being pumped into that industry by various players, and we could be part of that whole process. And then obviously banking happened to me because of that. Uh, but for me, I think what is more interesting is I was in my early 30s and all of it, and slowly and steadily I was moving towards my mid 30s, and that's the time when I was actually part of a leadership workshop, and you do your visualization and all of it. And how do and somewhere deep inside, what really came out of that is I have always got my energy out of connecting with people, in the sense I was good at debates, I was good at elocution, uh, and that used to give me a lot of energy. And whenever I used to get a chance, whether setting up this HNI division, the sales trainings and all, I used to try and do it myself. Okay, I mean, though it was not really something which I was supposed to do, because always taking those sessions and all used to give me a different level of high. I was probably in my highest self, while doing
I
so.
understand.
And that transition somewhere happened out of that workshop. And I still remember there was his teacher to me even now, somebody called Nitya Shanti. I don't know if you know or not. He is, he's a now a corporate trainer and whatever, But he was somebody who was accelerated pass out and became a Buddhist monk for around 7, 8 years, traveling Buddhist monk. And then he came back. And so in one of the one-on-one session out of one of these kind of programs, he got into, I don't know why it happened. It was something he wanted to probably, and he knew that I am probably going through some kind of a turmoil myself. And he tried defining, how do you define yourself? That was the whole idea of that session. And I defined myself as connecting authentically with people. That that's what I stand for. And there was no other function which could have given me that opportunity on an everyday basis. Okay, and that is when I decided that probably if I can get a chance of getting into this domain, and that's when the organization was progressive enough to give me that chance to, because at certain stage of life, already at a AVP level, to get a chance to change, shift into a new function, leading that function, and then obviously the other transition happened. I also did fellowships and other things, to equip myself with the right knowledge, to be able to. So I Toastmasters and all also I got into because of that. Okay, and yeah, I mean, as I was mentioning, when you want to expand yourself, you will stretch yourself, will try to do more things, and it opened up a completely new door and a new life for me in some way.
Very powerful, Kaushik. So it completely resonates with me. So as a sales, I was area sales manager in ICICI Lombard. Even earlier also, I used to train my dealers in HP. I was into dealer management. In ICICI Lombard, I used to take training classes of up to 180 people in one hour, where I would become the sales guy and I would make them the customer and I would sell
Okay.
them, show them how to sell it. So that high that you were talking about,
Yeah.
that high of being challenged by 180 hardcore sales guys and you are selling them, and then again like you said that it's a inner calling for you to be in HR because you are connecting with people. So similarly I had a very spiritual experience whereby I shifted into corporate training. So idea was to use whatever I had to help you. So I actually heal people through my workshops
Yeah.
which I do. So it resonates very powerfully with me. So you talked about the skill level, so knowledge. So how important is investing in oneself for young HR or people anywhere in any department at any level? How important is it to gain that knowledge, to invest in themselves to become better?
I think it's very, very important. You need to constantly upgrade yourself, constantly invest on yourself, and I keep saying this to my team and others, and I use a very simple example. Okay, that you invest on your car, you service your car every 6 months, right? When is the last time you serviced yourself?
Correct.
Okay, and if you don't constantly try to upgrade yourself, you will fizzle out. Okay, and especially in HR is a knowledge function. Let's not forget that.
Correct.
Okay, and as they say that the change, for example, say India as a country, the amount of change this country has seen in the last 50 years has been phenomenal.
Correct.
If you just, when I say last 50 years, just remember that even early in 80s, people didn't have television at their home.
I
70s,
remember.
hardly people had. Okay, that change I'm talking about. Today we are all into video calls. WhatsApp video. We can make a call to
There was a
US.
2 year line for telephones, telephone
Yeah,
connection. You had a 2 year
yeah,
waiting
two
line.
year line for it. So I've seen the whole transition in that area. I still remember my dad was a government servant, and I still remember the computers in 85, 86 when this government offices were getting filled up with computers. And I've seen, I mean, whatever. I'm just sharing. My dad saw a lot of growth for himself because he was one of those guys who adapted to computers like nobody else. I mean, till today, I've not seen anybody as good in MS Office that he was in. Now, the point is that as somebody who saw a computer for the first time in his 40s, okay, and could really, you know, adapt and embrace it so well, in this changing world, the change that the country has seen last 15 years, it is going to be more for the next 15 years. In fact, next decade, next 10 years, if the country is going to look very different, the function is going to look very different, and the result change is going to be huge.
Correct.
So if you don't invest on yourself, if you don't try to reinvent, maybe many of us, especially the younger generation, today will have to reinvent themselves. We are talking of changing functions, changing this thing and all. That's going to be the only way to survive.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, and they will have to probably reinvent themselves at least 3 to 4 times in their lifetime.
Correct.
And next 10 years is going to be huge. So
Correct.
if somebody is not investing on himself or herself, he or she is going to fizzle out much faster than one can think of.
Correct. I read a very good book by, I think, Daniel Pink or somebody, A Beautiful Mind, where he talks about that in the next 15, 20 years, an average person would change his or her job 7 times. And out of those 7 jobs, 5 jobs are yet to be created. So,
That's interesting.
so how do you manage that? I mean, the landscape is changing so rapidly. How do you navigate that? So we have talked about resilience, expansion, and upgrading your skill levels, upgrading your knowledges. Again, expansion in a new way. Anything else you would like to advise the youngsters?
Well, I think what is important is love what you do. I mean, when I say that, I
Hmm.
say, I mean, I know these are may sound a little cliched,
Hmm.
but uh, especially in this function, if you don't, for example, if you don't love people,
Hmm.
don't be in this function. This is, people's function. And
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of people who are themselves not people person, if I may use the word.
Hmm.
Yet they're in the people function.
I understand.
Okay. And so that element of true, genuine love for people is
Hmm.
something which is very important. Okay. I mean, to be there to do well in this function. So bring that in. There's a lot of, uh, you know, talks around that this generation, uh, there's a lot of this thing around work-life balance. They
Correct.
are, all of it. They probably give more priority to their leisure rather than, their work and things like that. I think work-life balance is very important. I've always had tried to have the right balance in place, and that will happen. So what is important is that again, it comes from expansion. So don't limit yourself. Explore more of life.
Hmm.
Have that balance because if you say love traveling, if you have any other passion like theater or anything of that sort. I mean, all of those exposures
Hmm.
basically helps you to be a better individual,
Hmm.
which allows you to do better even in the work that you do. Okay, because all of these are different kinds of education that they bring in. So please be in that journey of trying to get a lot more of life. Bring in that balance also. Okay, but it should not be that balance should not be to create more inertia and inaction in life.
I
It has
understand.
to be a different kind of balance. I
I
think that
understand.
is something more important. And this changing world have that balance of constantly trying to know more outside the work as well.
So, what gives the perspective? What is that? Is there any technique or a tool like we talked about spirituality or inner calling? So, a one-to-one discussion with us. So, a mentor helps. So, should everybody try to have a mentor, or is it maybe meditation, or how do you get that balance? See, because in today's world, peer pressure is so much. See, when we were, in our generation, when we were young, so we were hardly judged. From school to office, everybody would be having the same kind of lifestyle, same black and white television at home. I'm talking about late 80s, 90s, and that same Rexine sofa, refrigerator in the drawing room. Everybody would be having. So there was no comparison, there was no judging, even at the job. So people, there would hardly be any comparison. But today, the peer pressure is so enormous. So my classmate is earning so much, and I'm still earning this much. I mean, it used to be there in our times also, but it was to a limited extent. Now that information is available like anything.
Very true. Right.
That is one. Secondly, there are so many distractions. So I purposefully avoid using Instagram because I advertise my on Instagram. So I make it a point that I watch it only for a minute. Otherwise, you tend to get hooked. So there are so many hooks, social media hooks, and you end up wasting so much time on social media. So that is another challenge which youngsters have to be careful about. So how do they get the right perspective? What do they need to do to get that balance?
Look, I think again, I can only say from my own experience. For example, one of the things that, and I've become, I can't say I'm a very structured person, but something which I've developed as a habit and is really working for me is that every morning, 45 minutes to 1 hour, come what may. Okay, and I keep a track also. For example, this year I've hardly missed a single day of yoga with, I keep my eyes closed, whatever it is. It's like yoga, meditation, whatever you call it. It's a combination of both. That is really, really, when I say resilience, I think, some of that practice and developing those habits, because I think we all are servant to our habits, we human beings.
Correct.
So develop some of those, and everybody knows you need to get up in the morning, you need to run, you need to do something else, whatever works for you, but have at least one practice in place, where you are able to pause and reflect.
Correct.
Okay, so for me it is yoga, for somebody else it can be something else. And trust me, you are in a much better mental space
Correct.
to deal with various challenges, and challenges are thrown at you every now and then in the corporate world.
Correct.
As if you're mentioning, this journey to a CXO level, I think one of the key, as what I mentioned, as navigating challenges, but navigating challenges, being in the right, if you're not in the right mental frame,
Correct.
and there are enough challenges in personal life also for most individuals. We all are, there are
Correct.
various things, various areas of life you need to balance. And if one area of your life, there is a lack of balance there, it will reflect in the other area as well. But all of it, at the end of the day, can only happen when you as a being, there is a lot of balance in you. And that will call for some kind of practice that you need to have for yourself. I think that really works.
Yes, very right. See, it could be gymming. I mean, the idea is to
Yeah,
spend
that's what I'm
30
saying.
minutes.
Gymming, running, whatever, for
Correct.
everybody, anything for anyone.
But meditation is obviously, I have found personally to be the most powerful. So, do you chant also, or is it only just
I do yoga and meditation. Look, I had again, spiritual journey. There was a time when I was deeply involved in Art of Living in my 20s. I used to lead one of their projects. It was like a
very
second
nice?
job once upon a time. Then I moved I've done the landmark curriculum. I've been uh, what do they call as,
Facilitator.
landmark. Uh, yeah, ILP leader, whatever. I used to lead introductions, okay,
Very
for
nice.
landmark. Okay, so I've done that. I've done the whole curriculum. So
And then Toastmasters. Then Toastmasters.
Toastmaster has been one of my most fulfilling journey. Okay, I think what Toastmasters gave me, no other thing has given me as much as Toastmaster has. Okay, so all of it, uh, again, I think parallelly you need to have
Correct.
something to anchor on, because it
Correct.
helps you live a much more rounded, much more fulfilling, much more, if I may use the word, happening life. Okay, in many ways, where you make a lot of things happen in your life.
Correct. Correct. So Kaushik, we have talked about resilience, expansion, grounding in business, expanding knowledge, learning new skills, loving what we do, and good habits to relax and to get the perspective. I think one or two things which I would want to discuss with you is mentors. How powerful is it to have mentors, good mentors, and how can a youngster look for a mentor?
Yeah. So, the one is, of course, you are able to identify somebody as a mentor who is there, who's invested on you. That's something which is very important. But I think, what is very important in the corporate world is, and this actually came up with one of my conversation. I was actually I was interacting with a very senior talent, okay, and more of exploration conversation. And that person wanted to do this, that, I want to get into strategy, I want to do this, I want to do that. Then I asked a very simple question: that do you have someone in the corporate world, and you want your journey to look like that person? For example, some point of time, why do you think of Gandhi became a Gandhi? Because there were so many people who want to emulate his life. There's so many people who were, wanted to design their life looking at him. Okay. Similarly, many of the leaders happened like that. Similarly, in the corporate world, there are people, who wanted to become a Rosi Modi. There are people who want to become uh, JRD Tata. They tried, they were like heroes to them, and they wanted to live that life in the corporate world. That, some of the principles that they stood for, that the ways to conduct themselves, they tried to emulate a lot of those things, right? And that was called as the Tata breed of leadership, right? So similarly, do you have, I think more than mentor, do you have firstly some of these people, whom you have worked with, you have
Role model.
looked at as whatever you call it, whom you have looked up to, and probably that's the path you want to take. I think
Mhm.
that is something very important. And
Mhm.
if some of them can work as your mentor and you have that relationship, that's the best thing that can happen. But yes, have those sounding board, have those people who can guide you. Okay, if you have that, nothing like that, but there are enough heroes around you.
Correct.
Find out who are those. Okay, and if you ask for help, rarely it happens that somebody is not ready to help you. But
Correct.
most of the time, we are the one who don't knock our door. So
Correct.
knock those doors where you feel you should.
How to do networking? Because I found that most people, they do not network, either because they are so busy, they haven't planned for it, so they haven't set aside some time in the month for that, or they are hesitant, or for whatever reason. So how important is networking, and how can they go about it?
Well, look, again, I've not understood this whole word networking, though a lot of people say that I'm fairly well networked and things like that. But what already I've seen is more than networking. I think invest in your relationships.
Okay.
Okay, and also there has to be, if you look at, networking becomes very transactional.
Correct.
Okay, and but investing in relationship is not transactional. You
Correct.
should have genuine interest in people.
Correct.
So people that you have worked with, people that you meet, at various times at various places, uh, stay connected genuinely with some of those individuals. It should not be at a superficial, level. And I've seen that, especially in the HR fraternity, you'll see that some of the very senior HR folks who are very active, doing well, even in their 70s, in their late 60s, they are the ones you may think that they're well networked. More than that, they have been people's persons. They have always stood connected authentically with people. And so I think that is something very important. For example, when I look at myself, I have school friends, I have college friends, I have my management school friends, I have changed organization, I have friends from those organizations. I have my HR bodies in some way, where I connected with people. Toastmaster is one area where I was actively involved. In some way or the other, I think I have stayed in touch with a lot of these people and genuinely stayed in touch with them. Okay, I mean, a lot of people, I have seen who you had excellent relationship with, have been part of your team, they left, and many of them have never been in touch, with you or generally. But whereas, if, for example, here I remember in my office, almost all my ex managers have walked into this office to meet me. I think I have
Okay.
tried to keep those relationships going in some form or the other.
Very
A
nice.
lot of times I've dealt with tough manager, and many of my peers even today they say, "How do you get along with this person so well? Nobody else could." Like those kind of, not that I was the favorite person or I have any this thing, but it's always good to you know keep in touch with people in whatever way if you can help somebody, try to do that. If it is there within you, you lose nothing out of it.
Very
Okay, I
nice.
mean,
Very nice.
it really helps in some way or the other.
Very nice. So it's so powerful, Kaushik, because rather than the networking or the breadth of your relationships, it's the depth in the relationship that you have. And so
Yeah.
sometimes we may feel that somebody is not important in the organization, and we don't need to spend that much time listening to that person, but it doesn't matter. So relationship, it is so powerful, and I can relate to it perfectly well. All right. So this is as far as people who are starting their career or in the junior management. As we start moving upwards, towards mid management, what would be your advice for people at the mid management level?
Look, my advice to mid-management level is that's the time, again, whatever is the function that you're part of. I mean, middle management is when you need to really, if you are in middle management, try to, if I may use the word, dirty your hand or pull up your sleeves and try and understand the work
Hmm.
well. Okay, because if you don't understand the work well, you will not be able to tomorrow, neither will you be able to evaluate the work, nor
Correct.
will you be able to show direction to people, at a later stage.
Correct.
So uh, don't understand things at a superficial level.
Correct.
Try to get deeper into, some of the core. Look, everybody you can't be master of everything, but at least there are a few areas where you need to be quite a master at it.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
so identify your, areas of strength, identify your area of interest, and master at least some part of, you know, areas that the area that you're working in.
Correct. And then I think middle management is the last chance where you actually get the chance to get your hands dirty, because after
Absolutely.
that you don't get that chance. So this is the last kind of place where you can learn about the whatever is happening at the ground level in whichever department you are in. And as you move ahead in the senior level, this is the knowledge which helps you take those tough decisions or tough calls because you have that experience. Otherwise, so yes,
And I think the other thing, which you many times forget, you're talking then from middle management, as you move to the leadership. I think what is important. What is important then is you to succeed as a leader, because that transition. A lot of people actually are not able to have a successful transition there, and that's the gap, which really comes on their way. But I think one of the key reason why it doesn't happen is many of these leaders, they find it very difficult to let go. You
correct,
remain a manager, okay, and you try to micromanage things. You try to, you know, do certain things yourself. You need to be a good delegator and leaders.
correct,
So I think more than anything else, the art of letting go is also very important. As
correct,
a leader, when you transition from so succeeding from middle management to leadership is also very important, and that happens when there's a strong element of letting go there. I
correct.
think that is
Very powerful.
something which is very important.
Very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. So again, maybe it could be the fear of failure, the lack of self-belief that people at mid-management level maybe don't find it difficult to let go and get into the details of the things. All right. So coming to the senior management, what are the important things they need to look for? What would be your advice,
Senior management, they
both in
need to look for
HR and otherwise also?
what they need to look for in the sense from themselves.
What would be your advice to people? What are the common mistakes you have seen people at the senior management level make, both in HR or outside HR also?
One is, of course, I just said they find it very difficult to let go.
Correct.
Okay, and second is, some positions I've seen at a CEO level and all, it becomes very, very. You become you think you're very powerful beyond a point. In the sense
Ego,
ego. You become very self-obsessed. Some of those elements. Never lose out your
you mentioned humility to start with.
humility. Is never lose out on that. Keep your faith strongly to your roots.
Correct.
Okay, I mean, never allow yourself to be. Then another very important thing in the corporate world: don't think yourself to be beyond the organization.
Correct.
Okay, so something which is very, very important. And in today's world, never ever compromised on the basics of ethics.
Correct. Correct. Very powerful. We also talked about technology. You give the example of your father, and you also talked about that how things are changing so fast. So they have to be. So what do HR people specifically, what do they need to do to stay abreast of technology, to take it as a companion rather than as a threat?
Well, I think more than anything else, you know, AI is going to play a very important role. So master how to use AI effectively
Mhm.
into HR. Okay, I mean, a lot of people are not getting it. They're talking of AI. How do I know AI and all? Forget about anything else. Master the usage rather than anything else. Okay, I think that mastery is something which is very important in the next few years. How it all transitions into, we still don't know. But please, please, I think it is very important that we all work towards mastering
Can you give an
AI
example
for
or any
HR.
specific area where AI can be used in making things
It's
better?
already being used. I mean, all this AI, for example, in hiring, it's being majorly used.
Correct.
Okay, and uh, all these chatbots and all have a lot of elements of AI. You don't really
Employee
need,
engagement and all that.
yeah. More than employee engagement, any policies, any these things, all of these are now system generated. You ask the question, you get the answer in a second. Okay,
Correct.
you don't really need a HR person to answer many of those queries. A lot of those, payroll activities will get AI driven.
Mhm.
Okay, the employee entire there'll be AI in the entire life cycle management of employees. Okay,
Okay,
and so it's going to look very different.
perfectly fine. So maybe they should start making an effort to learn more of it and to start using
Yes,
it in their day-to-day work.
everybody, whether it's the younger generation or our generation, that's the only way now.
Correct. So it has been almost an hour since we started interacting,
Yes.
Kaushik. I didn't realize the time has flown so fast. So the parting shot. Anything else you would like to mention for any level or for general?
Well, I think since we're talking of HR, and if for those HR professionals who probably will be listening to this interaction, I think it's really a blessing to be in this function. Okay, I think just remember and look at this function with a lot of gratitude. Okay, because you've got a chance to serve people. Okay, and do that well. Think that that's probably a higher force. I will not use the word God. It makes very different to different people. But there's a higher force which wanted you to serve humanity better. And that's probably the reason why you are in this function. Always feel that gratitude for the function that you are in.
Very powerful words, Kaushik. And on that note, we would bring this discussion to an end. So thanks for your time,
Thank you
Kaushik.
so much, Amit.
It has been a pleasure, and I'm sure so many people, so many professionals are going to get motivated just by listening to you, just by listening to snippets of this discussion that we had. Thank you so much,
Thank
Kaushik.
you so much. Really, really appreciate, Amit, for the time. Thank you very much.